Should more people be looking at 3/4 ton trucks like this versus half tons nowadays? Half tons seem to be overpriced for what they are to me. Or is it that half tons have just become so capable that they're just eliminating that bottom end of the 3/4 ton market, where a lot of people don't feel like they need a 3/4 ton simply because the power that a lot of these half tons produce is enough to, take their trailer or whatever loads they need 10 times a year while still being able to park at the mall. Let's dive into the pricing. Now, we'll talk about capabilities and advantages, disadvantages of each here in a minute, but I wanted to look at quick pricing of kind of the big three, 3/4 ton versus half ton really quick. So these are 2025 Chevy Silverado 2500 customs. I'm going to compare these customs to their half-ton counterparts, and I'm going to look at V8s just to have a like-for-like comparison. A lot of people just don't believe in the little four-cylinder, so I wanted to get a comparison of like-for-like. So recently I did a live stream with some guys, and I was surprised to see that 3/4 tons really weren't that much more than the half-ton counterparts. I mean, take for example, this 2025. This is actually a pretty nice looking Z71 black Silverado custom, $54,994. It is the 6.6 liter gasser with the 10-speed automatic. Now I'm going to compare that to some of the lowest priced 2025 1500s here. This is the custom Trail Boss with a V8, $50,580. And this is the 5.3 liter with the 8-speed automatic, it says. But I feel this is sort of a fair comparison. I mean, obviously the 5.3 isn't as capable as the 6.6 liter gasser, but it also gets a lot better mileage. So there's those advantages and disadvantages that each have. But when you're looking at towing, a lot of people look at this as, they're going to tow their camper like 5 times a year or whatever. That 3/4 ton is going to be a lot more capable. It's going to have bigger hubs, bigger control arms, beefier, suspension. Everything is going to be a lot more stout on the 3/4 ton. It's also going to maybe ride not quite as nice as the half ton. Maybe it's going to not fit in the garage as easily as the half ton. But I'm just wondering to you, from a buyer's perspective, if I'm looking at this half ton at $50,580 versus the 3/4 ton at $54,994, I gotta tell you, I think this 3/4 ton 3-4 years down the road is probably gonna be worth more than that half ton. So let's go look at that and see if we can find some old ones just to compare these prices. And it's not all about, residual value down the road, but that does factor into your purchasing. It should anyway. All right, so let's see how these age or depreciate. 2020 Silverado, the 2500 is $34,988 with 105,000 miles. A 2020, 68,000 miles, $39,998, so almost $40,000. And then we can go down a little further. It looks like a little bit lower mileage there. 18,000 miles, $45,000. So when you look at the new pricing, I mean, look at that 2020 versus a 2025. That thing is really only depreciated about $10,000. That's not bad depreciation at all. Now, it's hard to find like for like. I'm searching in my area within 100 miles, but I'm in a pretty heavily populated area. So I wanted to keep the area the same because that can change factors. So here's the half tons, a 2019 Trail Boss, 119,000 miles, 28,000. And then we've got the 60 right below it, 60,000, 64,000 miles for 35.3. So that's actually pretty close to maybe the 3/4 ton price. So they sort of maintain that spread of about $4,000 to $5,000. So depreciation seems kind of similar. The half tons maybe a little bit more as they get higher mileage on them. All right, let's move over to Ram and do a quick comparison. You've got the 2025 Ram 2500 Bighorn. I'm going to do Bighorn to Bighorn just to have a fair comparison. This is a 6.5 foot bed, $55,718. That's the lowest price I can find in my area at a pretty reliable dealer there. Now, Ram, of course, hard to compare V8s in 2025 because they're bringing the Hemi back for 2026. Ram, we're going to have to compare the Hurricane, which arguably might be, maybe it's a little bit more torquey or at least as torquey as the gasser in the 2500. People really like the Hurricane so far. 2025 Ram 1500 Bighorn is $45,344. So that's actually a little bit bigger spread and probably a better deal, or makes maybe more sense to go with the half ton in the Ram. Of course, it's going to depend on trim level as well. If you watch other people's videos, you might be looking at higher trims. We're going to look at that in the Ford now. Jason Samko, he had kind of put me onto this Tremor versus Tremor in a 1500 versus a 2500, and there's a big price gap there. Now, obviously, like I said before, this depends on the package of truck I think you're getting too. Let's take, for example, this 2025 F250 XLT Tremor. $58,634. It has the 7.3 liter. Now let's compare that to the F150 Tremor, the 2025 Tremor. That is $59,097. And that's with the 5-liter Coyote V8. Now, obviously, there are other things to consider, like the 250 is bigger. It has a long bed on a lot of these. Maybe they're not as garageable. There's all these reasons why people are weighing out the pros and cons between half tons, 3/4 tons. But I think, the general gist of this video and what I wanted to ask you guys is are half tons kind of taking over that lower end 3/4 ton market, the occasional towers, where before, previously, before all these engines had all this power in the half tons, you kind of felt like you had to go to a 3/4 ton, or you at least did it for stability purposes in towing. And I think for some people, like in the case of the Ford, it's miles per gallon, right? People don't want the 7.3 if they only occasionally tow. They'd rather have the 5-liter or the smaller turbo engines and get better mileage most of the time, better ride quality most of the time, have garageability most of the time. And then, that occasional tow they do, it's not going to be as nice as towing with a 250, but it's fine. But here's the biggest question that I think I have, and I bet a lot of viewers have this question as well. You hear a lot of the time, many YouTubers and other people saying there's no margin in trucks, right? The trucks are just razor thin margins and the manufacturers aren't making any money. Well, if that's the case, how are they selling half tons like this Tremor F150 for maybe more than the 3/4 ton version? You cannot tell me, you'll never convince me that 3/4 ton version of this truck costs less to build than the half ton. So I call BS. Like, there's more margin in this Tremor F150 than there is the 250. There has to be. The 250 has way more metal on it. Bigger frame, more payload, more metal altogether, bigger hubs, drive lines, brakes. Everything on it is overbuilt in comparison to the half ton. Yet you're telling me that the half ton is going to cost more. So I think there's more margin than what they're leading on in these half tons. Let's go back to that Chevy example. Okay, so we've got this 3/4 ton. They're willing to sell a Z71 3/4 ton 2500 custom for $54,000. The V8 counterpart in the Chevy was $51,000. But look at the TurboMax version. So check this out. This is the same exact truck as that $50,000 5.3 liter. This is a 2025 Chevrolet Silverado 1500 custom, $32,420 brand new, 4-wheel drive. That's the TurboMax engine. Again, you're not going to convince me that going from the TurboMax engine, the 4-cylinder turbo, to the 5.3 liter, that somehow we need to jump $18,000. There's no way the 5.3 costs, I don't even think it costs more than the 2.7 for General Motors to build the 5.3. It might even cost less due to the turbocharger on the 2.7. And the 2.7's overbuilt. It's got forged components. So internally, it's built really well. So $32,000 for this. I think they've got more margin in their trucks than they're leading on, especially in their half tons. I would say when you're going out to negotiate, make sure that you are thinking about this. Think about the fact that they are willing to sell a 2.7 liter, everything else being the same on the truck, right? This is a half ton. Everything else is really the same other than the engine. Now jump up to a 5.3 liter and all of a sudden it's $50,000. And not buying it that they can sell the 3/4 ton for like $4 or $5 grand more with all that metal, all that steel, everything that's built tougher on those 3/4 tons. So there's more margin than they're leading on. So if you go buy a new truck, you're looking for that, just keep that in your head when you're negotiating. You got to have some foundation to give you confidence to maybe give them a little bit more of a lowball value when you're doing this. If you're actually in the market for a new truck, I know a lot of you aren't, but I'd also like to know from you guys, What do you think about the half-ton market? Do you think it's just going to continue to eat into the 3/4 tons? I do. I think many of these half-tons are putting out so much torque that people don't care about stopping and stability and all those things that the 3/4 ton provides in towing. They're most of the time just thinking about, like, I'm going to race someone at a stoplight in these half tons or going to the mall in it. I truly believe that maybe 20% of people that buy trucks are using them for true truck purposes, other than, ignoring the fleet side of things. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. As always, till next time, thanks for watching.